Hello, my name's Daniel Ripley from CG Dreams. Today I'm going to be showing you how to make this brush. I've chosen to use certain tools to show you certain methods that you can apply to more advanced modelling exercises. This video is ideal for new users and above. While I will be clearly showing you all stages, this video will not replace the manual or training that is directed specifically to just the tools. Tools for the job. Today we're going to be using the Universal Manipulator tool. This is the main tool handle and it has three functions. It is able to us to scale, rotate and translate in one tool set. You'll be able to find more information on this on page 44 of the Hexagon web manual. I also like to draw your attention to the trihedron. This enables us to see where in 3D space we are. It gives us a visible work plane in which we use for drawing out certain tools in specific orientations. You'll be able to find more information on this on page 29 of the Hexagon web manual. Next, the line tools. We're going to be using the circle from centre. The curve tool is used to develop shapes from which geometry is made from. In this project we'll be using the circle from centre to make the actual curve for the main body. If you want more information on this, refer to page 126 of the Hexagon web manual. Curve extraction. We'll be extracting curve from the geometry to use as a guide for placing the brush bristles perfectly. Have a look at page 147 of the Hexagon web manual for more information. Next, we're going to be using the fast extrude. In this tool we'll be using the fast extrude a lot. This tool enables us to produce more polygons from selected edges or faces. Again, you'll find more information on this on page 97 of the Hexagon web manual. Next is our edge tools. The edge tools are used to create additional slices from a selected edge. In this video tutorial we'll be looking at the edge tool that creates additional slices around a selected one. You'll find more information on page 92 of the Hexagon web manual. Tessellate. During this video we'll be using the Tessellate by Slice. This is a great handy tool to slice exactly wherever you want from an edge. For more information on this particular tool refer to page 102, again in the Hexagon web manual. The bridge tool. We'll be using the bridge tool in this particular case to create holes in our geometry. You'll find more information on page 122 in the Hexagon web manual. The Chamfer Tool. This tool enables us to control the round contours of edges. Sometimes we call this bevel. For more information on this, refer to page 181 in the Hexagon web manual. Multiple copies. This does just as it sounds, it creates multiple copies of geometry. This will be very handy for us during this tutorial. This will be used to complete the main body shape of the brush. More information can be found on page 199 in the Hexagon web manual. Weld Objects. We will use this tool today to weld multiple objects into one, so we can deal with these objects as one complete piece of geometry. One thing to note, that if you've got geometry lined up perfectly edge to edge, it will automatically weld the vertices as well. Again, you can find more information on this on page 113 in the web manual. The average weld tool. Today we're going to be using the average weld tool to weld multiple selections of vertices into one single vertex to close holes. This produces triangles instead of often unwanted n-gons. On page 126 of the Hexagon web manual you'll find more information. Today we're also going to be using the numeric input. We'll be using the numeric input from the property selection to control precise scale for both handles and get back to perfect circle from an overall shape edge. For more information on this refer to page 284 in the Hexagon web manual. Lastly, copy on support. This tool will be used to place the bristles perfectly on the extracted curve. Lastly, you can find all the information about this particular tool on page 201 in the Hexagon web manual. So now that we've actually discussed the tools that we're going to be using, let's start. So what we're going to do to start with is to go to the Lines tab where we've got all of our curve tools, and we're going to click on Circle from Center. From the drop down menu, we're going to select the top one and then simply left click and drag out on the screen. Click once more and notice to the property to the side we've got MBPTS, number of points, which it stands for. We're going to make sure that number 12 is in here, then click Validate. Once we've done this, we're simply going to scale on the Y-axis until we've got a shape similar to this. Let's just jump into the perspective view now. Making sure that our curve is selected, we're going to do a fast extrusion holding down the Control key to roughly that kind of shape. Now that we've done this, we're going to apply one level of smoothing and then click on this lightning bolt sign here in the dynamic geometry. That's loop select for the middle of here, L for loop, or we can click on this button up here, and then we're going to go to the vertex modeling tab, edges, and then we're going to click on the third tool down, which is a double-edged extrusion. We're just going to drag that out until we've got a shape similar to this. With all the center lines selected still, we're going to backspace delete. Now we're going to look from the top view. In the faces mode, which is the F2 key, we're going to select at least two of the faces here and then press L for loop. Then we're going to right click and drag around these end faces here and then press the Control key. And what this does is it will put it into a minor selection mode. As you can see here, when I press the Control key after the selection, you can see the minus showing up there. Let go and do the same to the other side. Now that we've done this, we can simply just bridge. Next thing we need to do is we need to select around these edges here. I'm holding the Shift key to add to the selection, then press L for loop. This only has to be done once. That's great. Now, in the Surface Modeling tab, select Chamfer. In this particular case, I'm going to have the range of 1. I'm going to adjust it until it's roughly the tightness that I want. I think there is about good. And we'll click Validate. Let's just apply a level of smoothing and we can see what we've got so far. Okay, all is looking pretty good so far. I'm just going to select the curve and just move this curve up out of the way at the moment. You can see I'm roughly putting it in between the end selection area. There's a reason for this and we'll see later on. But for now we're going to turn this curve off. The next thing I want to do, and actually I want to make sure my curve is selected at this particular point. I'll just hold the Control key and select that curve as well. I'm just going to rotate this around. Holding the shift key, we can actually lock our selection to a 90-degree lock. And now we can actually go and turn this curve off. Excellent. The next thing we're going to do now is going to go to the Utilities tab and then click on Multiple Copies. We're going to put the number of 6 in here and then validate. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to go back to the vertex modeling tab and then we're going to click on weld. And you can see this this means group all, and then we're done. It's now welded it into one single piece of geometry. Let's just turn this curve on just to remind us which end we're actually looking at. This is the end. And we're just going to select this geometry, select this end here and loop around. That's extrude once inwards, only slightly, and then we'll do it again. Then we're going to just push another extrusion, and each time I'm doing this, I'm continually holding down the control key for a fast extrusion. Finally, that's us go and to see these ends that we've got here, and we're going to select from the vertex modeling tab average weld. We just drag around these, make sure that nothing on the inside selected, and then we're going to increase the distance until all of the vertices snap into one. In the next section we're going to be creating the actual handle, and then from there we're going to be creating all of the actual hair spikes itself. So let's continue now. I'm going to select the edges at the other end now and loop that selection. Then I'm going to start extruding in just slightly inwards. And then one more time. And shape this in like that. And then one more time, and then I'm going to shape it in as close to what I want for the actual brush handle circle as possible. So it's not going to be perfect at this particular point. So what we do next is you can see over here in the properties panel that we've got in the Y and Z this numbering input. I'm going to type in 5 and then 5 in here as well and validate. Now what you'll notice is we've got a perfect circle again. From this perfect circle we can then scale it in or out according to the way we want it. In this particular case I feel that it's protruding out a bit too much, so I'm going to scale it in, select these edges and loop around and then scale it back out. By doing this it's going to have a better transition. And now I'm going to extrude out slightly and then go back far enough for it to be a nice handle. Now if you find that the handle is too thin, you can always go from the top view, select all of this area and then simply just scale it. Let's go back into perspective view now. Select the end loop of edges there, and then we just extrude inwards a couple of times. And finally, I'm going to go to the average weld, select these edges, or these vertices shall I say, and then increase the distance until they snap into one single vertice. Let's divide this handle up a little bit, shall we? So what I'm going to do for this is I'm going to go to the Vertex Modeling tab and select the tessellation tools. I'm going to select the third one down, tessellate by slice. I'm going to slice it roughly about there. I'm also going to slice it around about there as well. Now if you take off the smoothing, you'll be able to see better exactly where you're adding and taking away these tessellations. So I'm going to just select this tessellation, just move this out a little bit. That's good. And then I'm going to just slice one more time with the same tool, tessellate by slice. holding down the shift key, you notice that this little tiny square turns red. What this means is it's locked to the center of our current selection. Click once and then validate. I'm going to loop select around this and then just scale this in ever so slightly. Okay, that's good so far. I'm going to loop select around this area here that I've got at the moment. Move this away just a little bit more. In fact, no, that is about right actually. And then I'm going to select this double-edged selection tool. You can see from the edges, and then we're going to drag this out ever so slightly and then validate. That's just scale this in just slightly. I'm going to create a nice little ridge edge there. Let's just smooth that and we can see that edge. I want the edge to be a little bit more tighter than it is at the moment, so I'm going to select around here and here, and I'm going to do another double edge. That's better. I'll do exactly the same thing for here now. I'm going to loop around. And for this I'm going to take the smoothing off because it allows me to see better what I'm selecting. Remember that you can actually do this simultaneously on several of the selections, but I'm just going to do it twice so you can see what I'm doing. Okay, that's looking pretty good. And this thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to slide this up a bit. So I'm going to just take the smoothing off. And with our tessellation from slices we selected before, I'm going to continually hold down the shift key to make a number of slices. This way they're all going to be equal. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to select just one edge from each of these. And then press L for loop. Then we're going to go back to this vertex modeling tab and the edge tool again, and the same one as we selected before, the double edge one. Drag out ever so slightly. With these edges still selected, we're going to go over to the properties here and we're going to type in 4 by 4 on the Y and the Z and then validate. Now when we smooth, we get this effect. Of course, we're missing one important aspect of this, and that's the bristles itself. So let's just do that in the next section. So in this part, in the final part, we're going to be making the bristles for the brush. This is really fun for doing this because we're going to be using some actual really nice features within Hexagon, and it makes it really quick and it makes it really intuitive to use. We're going to be using the curve tools and we're going to be using copy on support. Let's just select the curve and just turn that back on again so we can see it where we left it earlier. We'll turn off the other geometry, and we're not going to need all of this curve, so we're going to select the bottom half of these curves, these edges, and then delete them. Let's delete one more as well. Okay, that's good. Now we can either keep the curve that we've currently got, or we can make a brand new curve. It doesn't really matter. In this particular case, I'm going to show you how to extract a brand new curve. We're going to select from there to there, and then click on the between, which is the J key, and then we're going to press the Control, hold it down, and then the C, this copies, and the Control and V for victory, which pastes. And now we have a brand new curve. We do exactly the same thing for the actual side. We're going to select at the very end and right to the other end and between. Copy and paste, and we've got another curve. So that's first of all, turn off all the geometry and we just work on one curve. Obviously at the moment we've got nothing to actually bind to this curve when we're using copy and support, so we need to make something. It's going to be very simple. So next of all, we're going to be just rotating this view so we can see the work plane is between the Z and the Y. And we're going to select the cylinder from the 3D primitives, click once, drag out, and then pull this upwards. Now we don't really need 8 segments or the parts to this, so we can just have this 8 by, say, 4. That should be enough. We want to keep the geometry quite low for this, in fact, because we're going to have many of these. Let's go for 2. Need to make this a lot longer. And we're just going to loop a select around this edge here, extrude upwards and outwards. And we're just going to be forming like a little bubble that's going to be on the end of our bristle that we're going to have. We're just going to extrude this inwards. And from the surface model, or the vertex modeling tab, shall I say, average weld, drag around, and then close this distance to one single vertex. Let's select that vertex and just pull that up a little bit. And we'll just smooth this and see what we've got. And that's not too bad. Let's create one more loop just underneath here to tighten up a little bit. So we'll loop, we go to the vertex modeling tab, edge tools, and this top edge tool, we just drag that down. Alternatively, you can use tessellate by slice as well. That's to smooth that. That's looking much better. And now we can just scale this down. Let's just turn back on our geometry and just see how big this is in comparison to the actual brush. We'll just scale it down until we think it's roughly the kind of scale that we need it for the actual bristles, and I think that would probably do it. Also, while you're at this particular point, you may want to adjust the actual length as well, but I think for this particular moment it's fine. I'm going to turn off this geometry again. Let's just go underneath the bottom here. We're going to loop select and extrude inwards. I'm just going to turn off and collapse this dynamic geometry that's on at the moment. We don't want that on. That's good. And we're going to use that average weld again and just close off this bottom there. The distance until it merges to one vertex. Now that we've done this, we can actually now finally use copy and support. So we're going to go to the Utilities tab and click on Copy and Support. And then you'll notice that to the properties to the right here, you've got this little tiny star shape, which is represented in center point. We click on this, we just look underneath where this bristle is, and we just go right near the center and hold the Shift key and it will lock, and then we can click once. Once we've done this, we can then click on the actual curve. Sometimes it doesn't recognise that you're clicking on the curve. In this particular case, Control and Z just a matter of getting the right angle sometimes. Once we've done that, we need to select the right type. So in this particular case, number 4 is the right type to repeat. That's perfect. And then we validate. This single one that we've got now, we can actually just hide. We don't need this no more. This one is currently grouped. We need to weld down. So we're going to select this group, go to the vertex modeling and then click on weld. We're just going to click validate and now it becomes one piece of geometry. Now let's select and highlight this other curve and that would be the one. And there's a little bit too many points in this particular case that we need, so we need to delete some. So let's just turn on our geometry again and we'll just have a look. So I don't want half of these points selected, so I'm going to select this curve that's good, and we're going to delete most of these points. So I'm not going to need this N1 and I'm not going to need the ones that are actually to either side. There are different methods to select, like 1 over every number that you want, but in this particular case I don't mind just using a couple more seconds just to select these. That's great, and then I'm just going to delete, backspace delete these. That's great. Now with this curve selected here, you can see that when you move this side to side, that in the properties over here where the numeric values are, there's only one numeric value that's actually moving. If we select our geometry for a second and we just click on one of these vertices in the center here, again you can see this numeric value change. We want to select this numeric value, in this particular case in the Z, just left click and drag it around, right click and copy. Then I'm going to select this curve and paste. So I'm going to select around this numeric value and then right click and paste. And when you validate that, it will now put it dead center to where everything is, and that's exactly what we want. This is aligning it up to just where we want things. That's perfect. Pretty happy with that. Again, you move up and down, you can see here that we're now working with the Y axis. We do exactly the same thing, as we can lock it to a specific height that we want it. So we can do the same thing. Just take note that the height of this is, I'm using Control and C in this particular case to copy this numeric value. We're going to select this curve, Control and V, and then validate. This is for those of you who want to be absolutely precise with what you're doing. Now that we can actually see this, I can make a couple of adjustments to this curve if need be. As an example, this end vertice here, I want to move over to more the center area of here. Everything else is perfectly aligned. Now finally we can just turn off this geometry and then select this geometry here where our bristles, and then we can do the same things we did before. Utilities, copy and support, and go straight along the center. In this particular case, we're going to select the orient of the copies, number 5, and now there we've got it. You can see all the different methods that we've got there. That's great. Now you notice the center point here is centered based off that we've had before. By clicking on this center point, we just move and select one of these. And the original, a bit hard to see at times. This is something that you probably want to do at the beginning. You can see how this moves up and down according to the actual center point that you're selecting. Now we just click and select that according to the actual curved center point and then validate. I'm going to press escape twice and select this new selection that we've got, and that's excellent. It's all in there. And then we're just going to click on vertex modeling and then weld. We'll just validate that. Finally, we'll just turn on that geometry that we had there before. And we can just move this all into place. And finally, if you want to make any tweaks or anything like that to it, this is the time that you can do it. For instance, I want the actual handle to be bigger. I'm going to select all the area in which the handle is from the top view. Just scale this out. So there we go. We now have a brush with all the bristles. And we can turn off or delete all of these curves that we no longer need anymore. So I hope that you learned something from this and you found this quite fun. And check back for some more tutorials on www.cgdreams.co.uk. Thanks and bye for now.